Another Tuesday training. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here today. We're going to talk about something, one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about the idea that we're going to talk about stretching today. We're going to talk about stretching today, and I'm going to tell you about my idea about that in a minute. I'm glad you all are here. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Natasha. Hi, Gary. Hi, Perry and Michelle and Lana and Judy. Is that everybody? Did I say hi to everybody already? I thought I saw Anna here too. Is Anna in the house today? Or did I just have a premonition of Anna in the house? I thought I saw Anna. Oh, well, maybe Anna will be joining us, and I am actually having a premonition. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. We're going to have a really fun conversation today about stretching, one of my favorite topics, and it came up in our study group just this past Friday. A little birdie told me that there were some questions about stretching and my opinion about stretching and what do I think about stretching and all the things. So we're going to talk about what I think about stretching. And newsflash, it doesn't exist. What? Stretching doesn't exist. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to give you all the hows and whys. We're going to walk through what stretching, what we think it is when we're calling it stretching. And we're also going to talk about the anatomy behind that. So you're going to have another great anatomy learning, which is so fun. I'm going to actually change my settings here for a second. So if you guys see me poking around, I just changed them earlier this week, and I recognize we would have a more intimate setting if I did that. Okay, great. Did that change your screen for you guys? No, it didn't. Only mine. All right. Hi. So we're going to talk about all the anatomy behind it as well. So you'll have a good anatomical base on why I'm saying what I'm saying. And then we'll have time to open up the pipeline for some Q&A. So any questions that you have on stretching or any other topic, any other anatomy topic or client-based topic, as you know, I'm here for all of that. And for those of you who are joining for the first time and you don't know that I'm here for that, hi, I'm so glad that you are here. I'm your host for the hour. I'm Gina Schatz. I'm the developer of the Schatz method. I am both a manual and movement practitioner, licensed and certified in all the ways. And I've been working clinically for 31 and a half years. So I actually know a thing or two, and I would love to pour into you with what I do know and how I know to create success. So any question that you have that would guide you towards success, I'm happy to support you with that, with the answer to that question. So we'll have time for that at the end of our hour. So we're going to dive in right out of the gate with stretching is one of the primary functional anatomy principles that I gathered and collated work with clinically, and then also created a whole course around because I was like, oh, wow, this is actually really good stuff. Like this sort of changes the idea for me when I'm working with a client. And it changes specifically anything that I'm working on that's musculoskeletal discomfort or pain for them, and creating the results that I want and that I know you all want. And as I was working and moving through these principles, I didn't know that they were principles at the time. I just recognized like, oh, there's these things that I always know that I always defer to and default to. And great, that works for me. And then I started interfacing with all of you lovely beings. And I was like, oh, wait, they get to know these too. They totally get to know these. So I put together a collated workbook, if you will, on 4 of the 8 anatomy principles. You can get that on the website. I think a lot of you already have, actually, but you can download that for free. And then we put a whole course together on all 8 of them, what each of them means to both manual and movement practitioners, and then how to workshop all that out. So a little sidebar here, today's Tuesday training will be sponsored by our Applied Functional Anatomy course, which is the course that I designed around these 8 principles of movement. It's actually a course that one of our Schatz method trained practitioners, who's a movement practitioner originally, she's a Pilates instructor, she said that was her favorite course of the whole slew. And we have hundreds and hundreds of hours of training. And the reason she gave was because it really put these ideas around functional anatomy and how the body is designed to use for her in her movement practice, already coming from a movement background. So if that is a value too, I thought I would share that with you. we sometimes get a little, I hear practitioners get a little dissuaded when I'm talking movement if they're a manual practitioner and vice versa. And as always, I'm here to encourage all of us to stay in that middle line where both of our worlds meet, meaning the manual world meets with the movement world. And you don't have to be either, because the idea is that the body's designed the same, whether you're a manual practitioner or a movement practitioner. So if you know the design, then you can interface with the body in a way that's helpful to the body that you're interfacing with. If you don't know the design, then you're just sort of running around with techniques, so sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping one of your techniques sticks and works for the person you're working with. And I beg to ask then, works to do what? Like, what is your intended outcome when you're working with a client? I know what mine is, and I know a lot of you have gotten clear as well, and you still get to keep asking, like, what's my intention here? If my intention is to get them out of pain, great. That's still step one. The next step to that is, for how long? For how long do you want to get them out of pain? Because there's lots of amazing techniques, guys. I'm trained in a lot of them too, and a lot of them feel really good, whether it's a movement technique or a manual technique. And I could feel good for the hour. I might even feel good through dinner. But my intention, my Gina's intention when I'm working with a client is to eradicate their discomfort and their pain and their musculoskeletal dysfunction so that they can go do all the manual and movement experiences that they want and feel really good all the time and not have to have an intervention because of this pain or have to modify something because of this pain. And modifying is common in the movement world. Manual practitioners, I beg you to consider how many of your clients have asked you to not touch something or go light in this area or avoid that area. That's a modification. We're all modifying all the time. I, as a general rule, as a clinician, I don't modify. I remedy. So again, oh, thanks, Lori. So Lori just popped that in the chat. Thanks so much. As a trainer, I'm also encouraging you to think in that way. If you like that way of thinking, and I know you all do because that's why you're here. If you like that way of thinking, then that's exactly what we're going to uncover together. If you don't like that way of thinking, then you probably aren't here. And if you stumbled on us by accident, you probably aren't going to like it. So, hi, Cheryl. I'm glad you're here. No, it's all right, honey. It's okay, but thank you. You can come anytime. Yeah, you can pop in when you can, leave when you need to, watch it on the replay if you can't be here live. It's all good, but I appreciate your respect. It's so lovely. So here we go back again to both manual and movement providers. I'm stating my case here, why the 8 functional anatomy principles matter. Okay. One of them is about stretching. Stretching doesn't exist. If we're thinking that stretching is a thing, hey, Rhonda, I'm glad you're here. If we're thinking that stretching is a thing as a manual or a movement provider, chances are we're not doing the remedying that we talked about. We're not remedying longer than today's session or even the end of today. And also, we are misguiding our clients into believing that stretching is a thing. And they're also confused about whether they should stretch. Should I stretch, Gina? I hear this all the time. And I take a nice deep breath. I calm my parasympathetic nervous system. I smile a little bit and I softly answer the question with the same foundation and information that I'm answering to you guys. Okay. When done correctly, stretching can change things. Most of the time, we're not doing it correctly though. And that's the key. When applied correctly or when implemented by the client correctly, accurate stretching can be a basis for what I consider corrective exercise. And you don't have to be a movement or, you don't have to be a movement provider to want corrective exercise. If you're stretching your folks passively while they're on the table, you still want to know how to do that correctly. Now, it might sound like I'm contradicting myself because you're like, wait, Gina, first you say that it doesn't exist, and then you say if it's done correctly, it's okay. What? Well, we're going to walk through that exactly. We're going to walk through that today. If we don't stretch correctly, if stretching is done incorrectly, whether you're a manual or a movement practitioner, or whether your client is doing it on their own, you could create an injury. If they're doing it for themselves, They could create an injury or worsen the pain that they have. Best case scenario is that they worsen the pain that they have. Actually, the best case scenario is it doesn't do anything and it's sort of a waste of time. But if we're talking about what change it could make, the best case scenario is that it makes something a little bit worse. Either way, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the musculoskeletal problem. And stretching is a trending topic right now. It's nationwide pretty hot. There's stretch labs opening up all over the place. There's stretch certifications that are being offered all over the place. This is a big deal. This is a big, 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 big deal. And again, done correctly, awesome. Done incorrectly, injurious. That's a black and white. It's a only 50% of the time are you going to win that game. We want to win the game all the time. So if stretching doesn't exist, and it doesn't, let's walk through the anatomy of that. First off, we know we don't stretch ligaments. We know we don't stretch tendons. We don't stretch connective tissue. It doesn't have stretchability in it, and we don't want to stretch it. And if you're just hearing that for the first time, we have other Tuesday trainings in here on our channel. Please go back and watch those because we've talked about them a lot. That's also a trending topic right now. And I think it's because stretching is a trending topic right now. There's all these, stretch certifications, as I already mentioned. So now everybody's thinking, well, then if stretching is a thing now and I should get certified in stretching, should I be stretching all the things? And the anatomy tells us no. No, we should not. We don't want to stretch ligaments. We don't want to destabilize someone's constitution. We can't physically stretch tendons. And if we know the anatomy of that, we're positive. We can't stretch tendons. We don't even really stretch fascia. We affect it, but we're not stretching it. The only tissue in the body, soft tissue, that has stretchability in it, the way we're talking about stretching in this conversation, are the spindles in muscles. They stretch. They have a stretch reflex wired from the brain. Awesome. So that's the only tissue that we should be stretching, not all the other. Don't get into dark and stormy places and start stretching all kinds of things. We don't want to do that. And even still, while muscles have spindles in them and spindles do stretch, stretching as an action doesn't exist. I'm still a fan of it, but it doesn't exist. What, Gina? You keep saying that. Okay, let's keep going. So let's now use the anatomy to reveal the truth behind what I'm sharing with you. The idea that stretching doesn't exist and there is a way to do it accurately. What? How are both of those things true at the same time? Let's use the anatomy. Okay, first off, every movement that we're doing in our body and every muscle sensation and discomfort sensation that we have in our body, so I'm speaking to manual providers and movement providers alike, all of that input about a musculoskeletal opportunity for intervention is wired from the brain. So I say this a lot as well. This is also another one of the principles. You're working with the nervous system before you're deciding whether you're a manual or movement practitioner. And if that hasn't landed yet, we're going to go over that as we move through the 8 principles of anatomy, but I'm planting seeds for you now. If a muscle's going to stretch, it's going to be the brain that's going to tell it to do that. If a muscle's going to give sensation of discomfort, it's going to be the brain, the nervous system that's going to tell it to do that. If you're going to interface with someone by asking them to move or laying your hands on them, you're interfacing with their nervous system. It's the nervous system. And because we now have put the nervous system on the pedestal where it belongs, there is no command in the brain to tell a muscle to stretch. There isn't. You can practice it right now. As you're sitting here or as you're listening to the sound of my voice, think your thoughts and ask your brain to contract your body. Contract. All your muscles contracted, right? Whatever ones you chose, or maybe a few extras that jumped in there too for the party. Okay, great. So we know that there's a command, an instant command for contract. We proved it. Now ask yourself the opposite. Ask your brain, quick, relax, stretch all the muscles. Did your muscles stretch? No, they did not, because there's not a command in the brain for that. So stretching doesn't exist as a command from the brain. And everything we're doing as body workers is brain interfaced. We know this. Okay. Next thing we know, because we're using the anatomy now to reveal to us whether stretching exists or not. Next thing we know is that all movement in the body is built on a lever system. All movement's built on a lever system. We had a masterclass on that earlier this year. It's also a principle of movement, one of the 8. That means that if I want to bend my elbow, which is called elbow flexion, in order for me to bend my elbow, the brain tells my body, and for those of you who really know the nervous system, motor skills are further down in the spinal cord. Don't let that freak you out. And don't let it just distract you from what we're talking about. It's still the nervous system commanding the muscles to move. They're not moving on their own, okay? If I want to flex and bend my elbow, the command from my nervous system is to shorten this muscle here so that this muscle lengthens. Lengthening is stretching. The command is that this muscle contracts for this one to lengthen. That's the lever system. All movement is designed like that, based on a lever system. All joints are built that way, and it's in response to a command from the nervous system. The lengthening side of the lever is in response to the nervous system telling me to contract muscle A to get muscle B to lengthen. That's the design. That's the design of the lever system. That's how movement is created in the body. The nervous system tells muscle A on one side of the joint to contract, and the opposite side of the joint lengthens in response to the contraction, not in response to the nervous system saying, stretch. Doesn't work like that. We already confirmed that in our body. And as we're working through musculoskeletal issues and compensation patterns and all the things, there is a time when one or both sides of that lever system might get a little hijacked. The guy who's supposed to contract isn't doing it, and the guy who's supposed to lengthen isn't doing it, and now movement is distorted and then ensues pain. For sure. In order for us to get there in our treatment plan, in order for us to insert our skill to support the person that we're working with, when that happens, the disruption in the lever system, we must understand the way the lever system is wired in the first place. Otherwise, what are you fixing? Restoring it to what? Correcting, exercising what? What are you correcting? Back to what? Where is the corrective place? So we need to know our anatomy. And you guys have heard me say this a lot. Lever system is the simplistic design. Going one layer broader, reciprocal inhibition is actually how joints move, which is a orchestra of muscles creating that lever that we already talked about. If we're not clear on what reciprocal inhibition is, if you're not clear what the lever system is, I totally get it. You get to know it because, again, you got to know the anatomy to be able to add something that's therapeutic, rehabilitative, restorative. You got to be able to do that. Go back and find those. We have them in our playlist in our YouTube channel. In 1 second, Amin, I'll come back in 1 second. Let me just wrap up this thought. In reciprocal inhibition, which is an orchestrated version of the lever system, I highly recommend you learn lever system first. And I know I'm telling you this is the best way to do it because I used to teach reciprocal inhibition first, and it's kind of confused everybody and got them lost in the sauce. And then I just broke it down to lever and everybody got it. And then I added reciprocal inhibition and everybody got it. So I'm telling you, this is best practice just from all the years of teaching that I've done. Learn the lever system first and the joint actions that go with it. Recognize what muscle's doing the contracting, and then go on to reciprocal inhibition. Once you go on to reciprocal inhibition, the muscle that is doing the lengthening, the response to the contraction is the action. The muscle that's doing the lengthening is designated as the antagonist. In reciprocal inhibition, the muscle that's doing the lengthening is called the antagonist. By definition, that also tells us that stretching doesn't exist, because the definition of the word antagonist means to counteract, not act, not do the doing, counter the action. The action is contraction. The action is not stretch. The action is contraction. Say it one more time. The action is contraction. The guy who's lengthening, called the antagonist, is counteracting, not acting. His counter is the stretch, which is not a command from the brain. We already proved that in our body. You guys with me? This is landing so far. Did you love how anatomy is just going to give you the answer? It's not even my opinion anymore. I mean, your question is spindles in the muscles the same as knots, contractions in the tissues? No. Knots and contractions in the tissues are impacts and effects of the spindles. Spindles are part of the anatomy of the muscle. The spindles are the spaghetti. For those of you who've trained with me on muscles, I teach them as long strings of spaghetti in a bag that we get at the supermarket. The muscle is the spaghetti strands. Those are each of the strands of spaghetti are the spindles that make up the whole bundle of pasta, which we designate as the muscle itself. The bag around it would be the fascia. If you guys need this anatomy, please let me know that. I would be over the moon to support you in this. We have training on every single thing I'm mentioning to you. Every single detail that I'm going over with you today, we have loads of it in our academy. All of our SHOTS method practitioners are nodding right now because they've heard this from the very beginning. This is the way we learn. Now I don't see your question. I mean, I see a question. Thanks for the explanation. You are more than welcome. I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, so the anatomy has shared with us now, revealed the truth behind what seems like my opinion, that stretching doesn't exist. It does in response to contraction. So that means that if we are intending a stretch, if we are aiming to lengthen muscle spindles, we must know the muscles that do the contraction on the opposite side of the lever to safely and effectively lengthen the tissues on the muscle we're intending. I'll say it again. In order for us to lengthen a muscle, if that's our intention, in order to do that safely and effectively, meaning by design, the way to lengthen that muscle is by contracting the muscle on the other side of the lever. In order to do that, we've got to know the muscle action, the joint action. We've got to know the muscle that does that action, the contraction. And that means the opposite of that joint action is the muscle that's lengthening. So you've got to know joint actions. I've said this 100 times. And then you work in tandem with that design to create the stretch in the muscle that you are intending to stretch. Just stretching someone, lifting up their arm and moving it is not stretching them. It's not stretching muscles. Muscles stretch in response to a contraction on the other side of the lever. If your person is passive and you're moving their body, you're moving their limbs. You're not necessarily lengthening the spindles in the muscle you're trying to target. You're just moving their limbs. Same thing goes for your clients if they're moving their own limbs. We've uncovered this in our workshopping in Sacred Sacrum lately, as we've been workshopping out what we're learning. We can move our leg and not actually contract the muscle who's supposed to be doing that joint action. So if the muscle who's supposed to be doing that joint action isn't doing it, we think, oh, we got to get that muscle to do its job, to contract. Absolutely. If that muscle isn't contracting in normal day-to-day living, which we've uncovered in our workshopping, then certainly the guy on the other side isn't lengthening, because the only way he lengthens is in response to the contraction. For those of you who are like, glute amnesia, that was a popular phrase a few years back. Their glutes aren't engaging. And you're still insistent on, quote, stretching the psoas or digging your fingers in there as a manual practitioner and, quote, releasing the psoas. I beg of you, to what end are you doing that? Because the psoas is not really lengthening unless you are contracting the other side of that lever. Not really. And it's not lasting because it's based on design. A muscle's full length is based on design. Is he repeatedly lengthening in response to the contraction? If the answer is no, he's not really lengthening. And if he is, it's not based on design. If it's not based on design, that's injury territory. The way we stay out of musculoskeletal pain is by restoring our body's action, the way we move, by design, and being optimally aligned when we're doing it. If we're not optimally aligned and we're not optimally moving in function, we create injuries. Musculoskeletal pain ensues. That's it. Okay. One more thing I'm going to share on stretching, and that is there's only one stretch that is 100% effective. There's only one stretch that's 100% effective. I teach it. I use it. I love it. I think all body workers, movement and manual alike, should have it. And it's PNF. Everybody wants to know what PNF stands for. It's proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Now you wish you didn't ask. It's PNF. It's much easier to just know PNF. PNF, PNF, PNF. PNF is a phenomenon in the body that, interestingly enough, doesn't even stretch the muscle tissue. It doesn't stretch the muscle tissue, but it is a form of stretching. And ironically, in the equation, in the formula, the fixed formula that is PNF, because there's a fixed formula. If you don't know it, you want to know it. We have course on that, of course. The fixed formula of PNF, ironically, requires contraction for the stretch to work. It's right there, even in the form of stretching that is effective and safe. And I love it. And I want you guys all to have it and use it. Even in that form of effective stretching, contraction is part of the equation and formula for it to work. Okay. I did it. 30 minutes. Gave myself 30 minutes to give us our lowdown on principle number 1. Anatomy, functional anatomy principle number 1. These anatomy principles are ours from the SHOTS method. So if you're going to go Google them, you won't find them. I have them. I've shared them in materials, print and coursework materials. The 8 functional anatomy principles that I use and teach are, we're going to lay them all out for you in this month. Number 1 is stretching doesn't exist. And I've just walked you through the anatomy that proves that point. It's not just my opinion. I was going to say humble opinion. It's not really humble. Anyway, there's a couple of people who walked in while I was in the midst of my talking, and I want to say hi. Lana, hello. Len, hello. Gatel, I don't know if yours is a hard G or a soft G. Is it Gatel or Gatel? Hello, I'm glad that you're here. I mean, of course, I saw you. Thanks for your question. Michelle, hey, I'm glad you're here. And Perry, I think I said hello to you earlier. Okay, my friends. So what's my highlight?
Can you please repeat the fixed formula for PNF?
I didn't give you the fixed formula for PNF.
Oh.
I said that I didn't teach PNF in this training, but if
I understand.
Yeah, but in the formula that is PNF,
okay.
In the formula that is PNF, contraction is part of the formula.
Okay.
It's the only effective and safe form of stretching that I believe in, that I know, that I teach, that I use. It's a hard G. Okay, awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And in that formula, ironically, I said, there is a form of contraction that must be in that formula for the stretch to work, which just reiterates the point I was making today, that stretching is only in response to contracting. It's not a standalone action. So if this is blowing your mind and you're angry right now, that's okay. If you're listening and you're like, what do you mean? I make a good living on stretching. I'm sure you do. And I love what you're doing. And I'm just asking you to think in a broader and deeper way now, using the anatomy to support you in the work that you're doing so that you can be more effective at what you're doing. Amin says, in order to lengthen or release the psoas muscle, is there an opposite muscle to contract? There absolutely is, Amin. And we did mention that here too. In every muscle, in the body, every musculoskeletal muscle that moves a joint, there's an opposite. We know that from our knowledge of reciprocal inhibition, even just from the lever system. So I mentioned to you guys that the lever system is how I recommend that you learn joint action first and what muscle does the job. There's one guy that does the contracting and another guy that does the lengthening in response to that. And that's true all over the body and in every joint. In order to safely and effectively support someone in a stretch, I'm not going to use air quotes. I almost did, but I'm not going to use air quotes. I usually do. In order to safely and effectively support a client that you're serving in a stretch, you must know the opposite muscle of that lever and the joint action that it makes. So the answer to your question, Amin, and how to find that answer is the same everywhere in the body. If I just told you the name of the muscle that it's its opposite, I would just be giving you the answer, but it wouldn't help you think through how to find the answer on the next muscle. The way to find it is to choose the muscle. And in this case, I mean, you asked about the psoas. The next step is, what action does that muscle do? Action is contraction. Action is contraction. What action does that muscle do that you're looking at? And what's the opposite of that action? If this is elbow flexion, the opposite is elbow extension. And then what muscle does elbow extension? While I'm in elbow flexion, the muscle that does elbow extension will be lengthening. And if you're like, God, that feels like a lot of work. Well, welcome to the anatomy game, my friends. You got to know that. If you want to help fix things that are musculoskeletal related, you got to know the basis on how it is built. And the musculoskeletal system is built on a lever system. One guy does an action, joint action, and contracting to make that joint action happen. The opposite side lengthens in response, and then it flips. If I'm going into elbow flexion, this guy shortens, contracts, this guy lengthens, quote, stretches. If I opposite this joint action into extension, now this guy contracted and this guy lengthened. Notice I almost said, when I'm going into the opposite action, this guy lengthens and this guy contracts, and I stopped myself because anatomically that's not what's happening. When I go to extend my elbow, this guy isn't pushing the elbow to lengthen, to open, to extend. It's not what's happening. When I go to extend my elbow, this guy contracts, and that guy lengthens. It's like that everywhere in the body. I want you to know it. I don't want to give you the name of an answer. I don't want to give you an answer and have you just go, oh, okay, great. And blindly remember it. It's not about memorizing based on data. It's about memorizing based on form and function. Okay, if you want to be an expert at what you do, that's the ticket. You got to do it that way. You got to do it that way. Okay, what other questions do you guys have? Gary?
I don't know when this was done by Boston University, but they did some research. That's
Shocking, Gary, that you would bring us. Shocking. Okay, I'm here for it.
The research was done on looking at a muscle movement. I'm trying to use the terminology of today. The facilitation of the antagonistic release is done within 3 seconds. If you wait longer than 3 seconds, then the antagonistic muscles will actually kick in.
Way longer than what to do what?
To do the movement. So if you're doing a contraction, the antagonistic muscles will come in after 3 seconds. But if you do the movement for only 2.5 to 3 seconds, you can do that that movement further. That makes sense?
What movement further?
So if I'm contracting and the antagonistic muscles are inhibiting, if I only contract for 3 seconds, I can actually move that muscle farther in the contraction before the antagonistic muscles kick in. So if I wanted to
What?
to contract the muscle. So I'm contracting my bicep. The antagonistic muscles are the tricep. And if I'm having some kind of issue with that contraction, if I only do it for 3 seconds, I'm able to actually get more movement than if I try to contract it for longer than 3 seconds, the antagonistic muscles will kick in.
Kick in what?
Kick in to resist the movement.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what's your takeaway about that?
I think that 3-second stretch in their research may allow us to do more contraction, if that's what we're trying to do, without, in typical physical therapy, they say, hold that stretch for 30 seconds or hold that stretch for a minute. I mean, that's common protocol.
Mhm.
And supposedly that will give you more range of motion. So
Okay.
stretch longer.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for bringing the research. I'm going to blow holes right through it. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Okay, great. So what I heard you say was hold the stretch. We don't hold stretches because stretching is not an action. What's to hold? So already I don't love the research. And maybe it's me misinterpreting what you're saying, but we
Maybe
don't
I'm not
hold
saying
the
it right.
stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we do hold a stretch and a physical therapist is saying hold the stretch, I'm still based on the design of the body. Is
Mhm.
the muscle who's supposed to be contracting on the opposite side of that lever actually contracting? Because if he's not, then the number game that you just gave us in the research isn't valid. Of course, they're going to find something wrong with that because the stretch is in response to the contraction. So we don't hold the stretch, we hold the contraction. Is that what's being cued? And this is theoretical because we're not in the room, right? But that's
Yeah.
where I'm just like, huh? I don't, what do you mean hold the stretch? I can't hold a muscle in a lengthened position. He only lengthens in response to the contraction. Is
Right.
the contraction happening? Otherwise, I'm just pulling spindles away from each other and the brain doesn't know what that is. The brain doesn't know what that is, guys. We already asked it to decide to lengthen spontaneously. It didn't happen. So I don't love it for indications on what physical therapy may or may not be doing. Second part, I have 3 parts of my blowing holes through it. Second part is that's based on the need for physical therapy, which means there's already a musculoskeletal disruption.
Correct.
Once we get into that train of thought, things go wildly weird. Let's call it that. Okay, there's nothing wrong because the body's ability to compensate is actually beautiful. It's why I can be sitting in the posture I'm in right now and I'm not in excruciating pain. I love that my body can compensate. It's just the habits that we want to be thoughtful about. Once we're in a need for rehab or a need for therapy, it's a coin toss of what could possibly be going on. And still, the way to work through that, the way I have worked through that successfully for the entirety of my career, is to not get mired in all the details of all the newness that this body brought to me and just go back to the way it's designed. Because if I can return it to the way it's designed with all of the shenanigans it's presenting to me, there won't be any pain and I don't have to focus on the shenanigans too long. It's simple. It makes it super easy. But it's only easy if you're steeped in anatomical knowledge. You got to be a body scholar. It's one of the questions I ask on our application to get into our program. Are you? Because if you don't recognize yet that you are, you will be when I'm done with you. You have to know the anatomy to be able to do complex musculoskeletal results. We just do. And it's so fun. Why not? third point that I want to offer on the research, and thank you so much for being open to hearing all this, Gary. I'm sure it's helpful for all of us, is that we can research till the cows come home. We can read all the research till the cows come home. But unless you're in the room doing something, if you're not a doer, you're a reader. If you're not a doer, your skill won't build. You can know all the research backwards and forwards. You can have all the details of all the research. You can know every word of every course that I've taught and have it memorized in your brain, and it still won't make you highly skilled. You got to be doing something with the material that you're learning and interfacing with bodies to really put any good use to that research. I love research. My method's clinically researched. I researched it forever and kept tracking my progress. That's how you do research. I'm not against research. I'm inviting us to create results. And the research doesn't create results. What we do with the research is what creates results. So we've got to still have courage to get in the treatment room and do the things and not be mired in our notebooks forever, because it won't move the needle. You'll just be more confused with all the data. So for those of us who are research enthusiasts, please do get your research and then do something with it. Go practice it on the next body that comes in and see if it's true. See for yourself. Let the body in front of you share with you a whole lot of information. I have a ton of information for you. I could literally talk to the end of my days on what I already know, and I'm still learning, but just on what I already know, I could talk to the end of my days. And I don't know everything because the body in front of me has a whole other story. Got to be present to that body, to interface with that body. So what I train us to do is get super knowledgeable and clear, super practiced in our skill so that you can be 100% available for the next body that walks in with all those shenanigans that happened when it got injured. And then be able to interface with it. It's literally in that order. Okay. You're all looking very thoughtful. Was that a fire hydrant answer? You guys have any other questions? I mean, let's see. You're in the chat today. Is the glute max muscle to contract in order to release the psoas? I'm still new to anatomical terms. Well, good for you. I mean, you got it. Yep, that's exactly the muscle pair in that lever system. Congratulations. I love you in the sacred sacrum course. It's really landing for you. I'm digging it. Okay, my friends, what other questions do you have? I only get fired up about the stuff that I'm really passionate about because I know it's true. I don't need to be right, but on this one, enough experience tells me this is the way. Make it easy for you guys. Here's why I get impassioned, because I want it to be easy for you. I really want the struggle bus to stop. There's so many people that deserve your help and you're so capable of helping them. I want it to be easy for you and enjoyable for them. And I want you to just check off all your success stories every day for the rest of your career. I want the struggle bus to stop. Okay, but that shouldn't stop you from asking more questions. We have a couple more minutes left. What other questions can I answer for you? How can I support you today? You guys full?
No, I'll go. I'm hesitant on this one because I feel like I know, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. So, so when a muscle's sore, like I took a class over the weekend and my quads are so sore, like humblingly sore. And as I'm realizing as I'm like moving and walking down the stairs that my body is compensating in different ways to make that happen. And being hypermobile, I'm like, did I just throw my body out of alignment by doing whatever I did to get my muscles so sore? And now I'm like, ooh. So I don't know if it's a question, it's more of an observation, I guess, about maybe pushing my muscle to that degree that it got so sore that now my body's compensating movement to around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could talk about this for a while. So when you said the word pushing, that's the word that I would qualify.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're exercising or doing any kind of work, I don't recommend that we do anything with pain and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Pain and discomfort is the body's vocal cords saying, no, please.
Yeah.
And if we're pushing through that, the days of no pain, no gain are OVER.
Mm-hmm.
It's not effective. It's you being an abusive bully to your own apparatus, and it's not ideal. So pushing is the qualitative word. If you know you're pushing, you know you're pushing. You're fatigued, you're uncomfortable, you're grinding your teeth, you're going anyway, your ego's involved, you're like, I want 15 and I only could do, right? That's pushing. That if you're doing that, then yeah, your body's gonna cry a sorrowful story for days to come after that. And well deserved, because you screwed it up, because that's not how we're designed. I don't think that's what you were doing, Lori, because I didn't hear that in your description, but that word caught my ear, because we want to also hear significance and subtleties when we're listening to what our clients have, created for themselves. If it wasn't that, and you just went for a workout for the first time after a long time, the soreness could be a couple things. It could be that those spindles, the contractile spindles, which have a wild chemical cocktail that goes with them. Now the chemical cocktail is involved and the spindles have done something different and they're moving. Some folks say that muscle spindles break down. Some folks say that they don't. I like to say that there's changes that occur when you take a muscle from non-moving to moving. Whatever those changes are, it's change. Nobody likes change. Our egos don't like change. They buck against it. Our egos buck against change all the time. It doesn't mean that the muscles are bucking against the change, but it means there has been change. So the next question running down that train of thought is, if there was change in my muscles and I wasn't pushing it and I was doing optimal movement and optimal alignment while I was working out, is this soreness a problem? No, but it is an indicator that you haven't been having that muscle contract often enough for the health of that muscle to not react in such a dramatic way after one workout. That's to be noted for sure. And if you have a constitution type that requires that you contract your muscles more often than less, if you don't know what that means, please let me help you with that and we'll get training on it for you. But I know you know the answer to this, Lori. If you have a constitution type that requires that you contract your muscles more often than less, well, then there's your answer. It's the not contracting enough and your constitution type is like, little delayed on the onset, but thanks anyway. And I'm going to handle the chemical cocktail. And clearly we need more of this, because every workout, every contraction shouldn't be, a drama drag show of theatrics, right? Then once the drama has ensued and now you're in hobble land, is that a compensatory action? Yes, it is. Not from working out, from not working out. So we need to be really what is the actual source? That workout isn't causing you to compensate and be out of alignment. The absence of working out up until that workout is what's causing you to now be in high drama land and compensatory response. So what's actually needed is more contraction, not never go back to that class. And that assumes, of course, that the movement in that class was optimal alignment and optimal function. And I don't know if I'm not there, but you know if you're there. So if you're not optimally aligned and you're not optimally moving a joint, then that could be the soreness. You did it wrong. Like something went wrong. We moved in a way that we aren't designed to move, that we aren't optimally aligned to do the movement. And yes, that always equals injury. Even after one class, movement providers, please hear me, right? So only you know if you're in the room, only the body itself knows. So, there's a couple things to consider along the way. And even still, if the workout was incorrect or the compensation afterward on a correct class experience is now part of the situation, it's all fixable. So it's okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I get to exercise more than once every 6 months.
Ah, and there's the confession right
Which
there.
I knew. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so case
On
in
an
point.
aligned frame, all the things. Yep.
And muscles move bone, which we're going to talk about. It's another one of our functional anatomy principles. Muscles move bone, and that does affect alignment. We'll talk about that as we move through our 8 anatomy principles. We're going to do a different one each week for the next few weeks here in Tuesday training. So we'll get to, like, is it the chicken or is it the egg or the chicken, or the egg or the chicken, or the egg or the chicken or the egg? And there's definitely a way to navigate that. All right, that was fun. Any other questions? How can I support you guys while we have a few minutes left? Or are you guys full up for now? Rhonda.
Well, I'm going back to Amin for a minute. So if
Meme?
Amin, yeah,
Amin. Okay.
Amin's question.
Okay. Amin's question, yeah.
So if somebody's psoas is shortened, I know you don't like that word, but it's the word I got.
I didn't say I didn't like that. I use it all the time. You guys
Okay.
got to be thoughtful about what you know about me and what you don't. Maybe I need to be more vocal about that. I use the
Okay.
word shortened all the time because that's what's happening.
So if the psoas is shortened,
Yeah.
and the glute max is weak,
Mhm.
is it possible for that joint to be in optimal alignment in order to try and strengthen glute max
Is it possible for the joint to be in optimal, or is it
alignment?
yeah, I'm sorry, we shorthand that in our community. Is it possible for the joint to be in optimal alignment? Or is it
Correct.
possible for you to then restore the action of glute max by getting the joint in alignment? What's your question? Which part of that
Well,
question?
my question is, with the psoas being short, the joint is not in optimal alignment. Is
Correct.
correct?
Very good. Yep.
So in order to contract glute max to oppose psoas, I'm thinking that glute max is too weak to fully lengthen psoas, and therefore the joint doesn't come into optimal alignment until further down the road when glute max gains more strength in order to lengthen psoas fully.
Are you talking about clinically, or are you talking about functionally?
Functionally.
Functionally down the road, yes, but clinically in the moment, you can correct it.
With PNF?
You do whatever skill you have to get you do whatever skill you have to balance out the lever system. So what I heard you say was that glute max couldn't oppose psoas. And again, if we just really streamline it down, who's doing the opposition of what action? So in a neutral joint, in an optimally aligned joint, there is no opposition. They're both neutral.
Correct. But I'm thinking if somebody sits a lot, sits all day at their job, and their psoas is shortened, and they get up and they try to straighten up, and they can't fully straighten up, therefore not in optimal alignment. How do you get the joint aligned in that scenario?
You balance out the lever system.
So you strengthen the glute max.
You balance out the lever system, which clinically is dependent on the body in front of you. When we're working with the lever system, so we didn't go over like clinical applications, and we didn't run through that today, but I appreciate that you're there, Rhonda. In all bodies, the lever system gets to be balanced. The guy who's doing the contraction should do it fully. The guy who's doing the lengthening should allow it fully. And then they flip. The guy who just lengthened should contract fully. And the guy who was contracted should lengthen fully in a balanced lever system. In the scenario that you're bringing up, it's not balanced to begin with.
Right.
So that also means that psoas is not fully contracting. He's just short.
Oh, okay.
So in that instance, with the body in front of me, I need to figure out 6 possible first steps. Do I need to lengthen the guy who's short? Do I need to strengthen the guy who's short? Do I need to contract the guy who's lengthened? Do I need to lengthen the guy who's lengthened because he's also locked in that position because there's different types of tightness, and it goes on from there. I don't want to do that right now because we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
But I can tell you that tightness types matter, balancing the lever system matters, and your skill to be able to address both sides of the lever are to be considered, both sides of the lever. And that's in the category of when it all goes wrong. So again, if you know the lever system, and it sounds like you do, Rhonda, I'm not in criticism here whatsoever, but if we know the lever system, and we're positive we know the guy who's supposed to contract, and we're positive that we know the guy who's supposed to lengthen, and we can tell if they're available to do that, then we can intervene when it all goes wrong. But if we don't have those first 3 steps, we're not capable yet. We really don't have, not capable is sort of like the wrong word, but like you're walking in blind if you don't know. You're just trying to like fix something and you're like, what am I fixing? So you got to know like, well, what's wrong? And the way to know what's wrong is by knowing how it's designed optimally in the first place. So if you follow the steps, you'll be able to sort that out. And if you're still working on one of those steps, then cool. Just focus on it until you get it. And then you're into fix-it land after that. Okay. So you're nodding. So good. Go ahead, Gary. One last question.
Quickly,
Yeah.
the 4 types of tightness is contractile, tensile, turgor, and I'm missing on the 4th one.
You got to go back and watch that replay. There's tightness types. We have a whole playlist, I think, on just tightness types. If you go into the YouTube channel and in the search bar in our channel and type in tightness, it'll show up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. They all require different interventions. And I will say again, don't just start going into the tightness types and when something's wrong if you still don't understand the lever system and who's supposed to contract and lengthen, because you'll spin around guessing what type of tightness it is and not really be able to sort it out. You sort it out based on the design. Okay, my friends, this was so much fun. Okay, wait, one more question. Y'all are loaded with it today now. I love it. Amin, I heard the psoas muscle holds trauma from the past. Many people have tight psoas holding onto trauma and need to release it. So by contracting the glutes, we can release trauma. Your thoughts on this? So I love the question, Amin, and this is what I'll say. There's no confirmation that I have, clinically speaking, after decades, that one muscle responds differently than other muscles when it comes to trauma. In fact, there's just as many arguments that say it's the fascia that holds the trauma, not the muscles at all anyway. And then there's other conversations that say it's only nervous system regulation. It's not actually trauma in the tissues. My answer clinically for me to make sense of it is they all get to be balanced. All muscles get to have their restored function on that lever system train. And when that happens, they will all be free to fly. And I will also share with you, I've had people on my table release trauma from working on quads, released trauma from, yes, working on psoas, smack me working on their scalenes. There's trauma everywhere in the body. So I don't want to really just be like, oh, the psoas is the problem. It's everywhere. And don't focus on someone's trauma. Focus on their wholeness. Restore the lever system so those muscles aren't in a held position, and the muscle will take care of it. The body is smarter than our ego. It'll take care of it if you give it the tools to do that. Restore it back to its optimal design and function, and it'll be happy. Okay, my friends, that's it for today. Thanks for staying that extra minute. Love the question. I'm looking forward to pouring into you on more principles of anatomy. If you have any questions left over, please share them in the comment section. You are welcome, Amin. Share them in the comment section below this video. And if you're in the YouTube channel and you want to like the video or subscribe, I would so appreciate it. Okay, I'll see you guys next week for more. Bye for now.